Como hicimos ayer, por favor, el protocolo COVID que estamos intentando seguir.
I remind you about the COVID protocol that we are following. Please wear your face masks and respect social distancing. I would like, I hope that the cocktail dinner yesterday pleased you. It was at an impressive venue. It rained a little bit, but I really hope you all had a good time. To start with the session today, Carmen Castaño is going to welcome you. She's the General Coordinator of Municipal Enterprises at the City Council of Seville. Carmen, you have the floor.
Bueno, muy buenos días.
Good morning, everyone.
Es para nosotros en Sevilla.
It is a pleasure, an honor, and a great satisfaction for all of us in Seville to hold this international congress from the UIA. I say this as a civilian, as Europeist. For us, Europe has given us the chance to widen our horizons more than ever, and this is giving us the chance to share with other broader territories from the European Union our experiences, problems, and solutions. One of these problems is climate change, of course. I believe that climate change is something that worries all of us. We need to be able to implement mitigation measures. We need to be able to achieve resilience for all the citizens in order to tackle climate change. We need to tackle it thoroughly. The City Council of Seville is engaged with the climate emergency. Its biggest body, which is the plenary of the City Council, and all the political groups, for more than 3 years, all of them adopted an agreement, which is a manifesto against the climate emergency in order to tackle this issue and to implement appropriate measures and achieve, as I was saying before, resilience and climate adaptation. Municipal companies also, each one of them passed their own climate emergency plans. I would like to briefly explain to you all what are municipal companies at the City Council of Seville. We need to be placed within the territory. Seville, after the regional government of Andalusia, deals with the biggest budget in the autonomous community. It's 1,000 million euros speaking in economic terms. The City Council of Seville, you have to take in mind that all companies are public, and the urban transportation, water supply, waste management, housing, and distribution for the markets, all of those services are publicly held and publicly financed. And all of these companies or enterprises account for half of the City Council of Seville. We're speaking about 45%, and they mobilize around 5,000 workers in total, and annual resources amounting to around 500 million euro. And they provide extremely essential services for the citizens, such as water. And I refer here to Emacesa, which is the water supply company of the City Council of Seville. And Emacesa participates in the project Cartuja Canat. To give you some context, Emacesa is a metropolitan enterprise which supplies water to 12 municipalities of our metropolitan area, accounting for more than 1 million people. Water has been the core of our Cartuja Canat project. The UIA appreciated this project, thought it was an interesting project to implement, thankfully. You saw it yesterday. I'm not going to develop further on this, but I just wanted to highlight some aspects. Emacesa deals with the water supply of the city. Water was the core of this project. It was an essential element, but we didn't want to do all of this alone, so we partner with the University of Seville, with the High Council of Scientific Investigations, with academics, with scientists, and with the Scientific and Technological Park of Cartuja, and an enterprise foundation together with the public administrations. All of those partners joined together to form a pool, a network, so that we can bring the Cartuja Canat project forward.
Triple hélice.
This is what we call a triple axis,
Es decir, la academia,
which joins all of these sectors, the academics, the knowledge about societies, territories, companies, and the administration. I don't think this is the right time to work in an isolated way. We need to create networks so that knowledge can flow to serve all of us, to provide the best possible solutions to the current problems we face. There is an ingredient missing, and this ingredient is also essential for the project, and this is social governance. We cannot provide solution by ignoring those who are going to be benefiting from those solutions. Emacesa, and please allow me to digress. Emacesa has 4 tables of stable citizen engagement related to the water cycle, but in this project, social governance was really essential. My colleagues yesterday explained to you in the afternoon which have been the vectors of this topic, and I just wanted to emphasize the strategic plan of the City Council of Seville, which is called the Shared Seville. The word share, sharing, it's a wide term in the Spanish language, and it implies participation, helping, making decisions by participating actively in them. This is what our strategic plan means, without no one left behind, being extremely sensitive to all the sectors of society. It's a shared city. It's a city that shares the space. In its festivities, in its day-to-day life, in its lifetime, it's a city that lives its streets and on its streets. And here is where Cartuja Canat intends to maintain this mindset of our city. Let's live on the streets, but we need to be able to live on the streets at a reasonable temperature for human beings. We don't want this only for civilians. We want this to be a reality also for Europeans. As I said at the beginning of my speech, we are profoundly Europeist, and we do this for everyone. If we achieve the good results we intend, we want them to be applicable as well anywhere else in the EU for a better improvement and adaptation to climate change. Thank you, Europe. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for this great opportunity to highlight knowledge to the benefit of all citizens. This is the end of my speech. I would just like to tell you that I really hope that your stay in the city of Seville has been pleasurable, and I hope that you have enjoyed our city as we do on a daily basis. And just one more thing. It is our hope from the City Council of Seville and from MSSA, please consider the city as your home. For us, it would be an honor. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Now we want to call on stage Pierre Rilanen from DJ Regio. I'm sorry for not pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you.
So, good morning from my side, and it's a great pleasure to be in Sevilla. And it was very nice to hear from Madame Castrinho of this district developments, what is in projection. But on my side, and on the side of European Commission, I have a great pleasure to welcome you to this second day of this Urban Innovative Actions flagship event. And today, the focus is on the, let's say, ongoing capitalization activity of Urban Innovative Actions on green skills for future and on affordability and social risks of this green transition that we are facing or we need to achieve. But when looking back briefly to yesterday, I am very sure that all of us, we agree that we had remarkable discussions. It was all about the role of cities in delivering on these ambitious climate targets that have to lead to an improved living environment in our cities. And there were many, many takeaway messages. I think in the end of the day, I just noted one that I want to maybe share this morning with you, that achieving this net zero future, it is all about people, all about the citizens in our cities, also suburbs, villages. We do not succeed if we do not take them with us. So that was really, let's say, one of the fundamental ending of yesterday's rapid session. But back to today's workshop. From the Commission side, I want to say that this is one of the prime examples of the knowledge management strategy of urban innovative actions. This strategy was developed a couple of years ago, maybe already 3 years ago, if I remember correctly. And it aims at testing new forms of collaborations to systemize knowledge dissemination as a testbed for the future European urban initiative, and also to showcase what the urban innovative actions can offer to inspire the use of EU funds, and here in particularly the cohesion policy funds in the current programming period. And the green transition is absolutely one of those topics for which the innovative actions has most to offer. We have the information that almost half of the core topics have targeted green transition, and at least a third, even more, of these funding projects, they have tested solutions with green elements. So for us on the Commission side, we firmly consider that urban innovative actions has been a great program, great achievement, and these projects have advanced our understanding of the green transition challenges. From the perspective of cohesion policy, I would like to underline that this policy is the key EU policy supporting the transformation of urban areas towards a sustainable future in a just and fair way. A big share of funding, almost 1/3 of European cohesion policy funds, will invest, let's say, greening of our societies. We have the figure of more than 100 billion euros. So one message among the most important from our side is that we would really like to see cities to seize this opportunity, to look into your managing authorities in your regions and member states, that could your city orientate sustainable urban development strategies toward green investments? And we have these policy objectives, this greener Europe with climate adaptation also in focus. Europe closer to the citizens, that is kind of a menu option to choose different focus areas. And we call it this, in our language, it is the compulsory 8% European Regional Development Fund earmarking. And this will result to a big amount, minimum of 16 billion euros. In this context, it's also very important for our side to mention that in this previous period that is now has come to an end, very important share of urban innovative actions project promoter cities. They were so-called Article 7 cities. So this means that they were those cities that were implementing these cohesion policy, sustainable urban development strategies on the ground. And those cities, I think many of them are here today, could look to the opportunities to orientate the future ERDF allocation, programming, to scale up or to replicate the successful solutions that were tested under urban innovative actions. And obviously that, let's say, implies to the other cities who are here today. But I will then turn to the European Urban Initiative. It was mentioned yesterday by Tim Coffey that he will not go into the details. I will tell more where we are with this initiative and what is it all about and the next steps. So we are in the final phases now to setting up this novel instrument, and green and just transition will certainly be high on its agenda. By now, I think you have possibly heard many presentations for this European Urban Initiative, but I just say the basics. So the overall ambition, why the Commission came out with this proposal, is that we want to bring into the same frame the current landscape of multiple initiatives, programs, instruments, tools that are in support of cities under cohesion policy. So it is kind of a one architecture that creates synergies and interactions with these different tools. And the result will be an integrated set of services for cities, so services that are stronger connected with EU policies. And here, obviously, cohesion policy is among the #1 priority. And the question is often coming, is it for large cities only? No. This initiative will seek to support cities of all sizes, be they large capital, be they small or medium size. And in our, let's say, political discussions, I think you have heard our commissioner, the issues of small and medium-sized cities are really, let's say, listened to at the moment as well. The next generation of urban innovative actions will become an integrated part of European Urban Initiative. So there will be no parallel program running. So next time we are in the setting like that, I think we are under European Urban Initiative. That is for sure. And the stronger focus will be placed on sustainability, scaling up and transfer of those solutions that are experimented in these innovative action projects. And like example of today, it will become even more important to capture and disseminate the knowledge produced by these experimentations. So in fact, today's workshop is really paving the way towards the future capitalization activities under European Urban Initiative. And we really find this approach that the Innovative Action Secretariat, thank you very much for the team, have put together, that is really now, let's say, has tested the study on just transition, that collects and consolidates the views of different actors. And we are here now learning how is this working, how can we do the same, lead the way like this in the future, events, policy labs, and seminars. So really bridging the silos and bringing in different actors from other communities than only the innovative actions. Having said that, I say a lot about cohesion policy. This is a #1 priority, but obviously there are other important EU-level initiatives. A colleague from JRC yesterday, he referred to the EU Horizon Europe climate neutral and smart cities mission. So we really need to connect the dots. And we aim to do so, but this will obviously be a progressive process, because I think the colleague Alessandro Rainoldi, he said that this is a Herculean work. So we will not achieve that overnight, but we will go towards that direction. So we highly welcome the involvement of UIA cities in all of these capitalization activities, to participate in studies, city labs like today, transfer networks of innovative actions that are now ongoing and funded by URPACT. And in fact, I think this will become even more important in future and must to do. So very briefly, I just turn to the other, let's say, activities of European Urban Initiative. There will be a very strong capacity building part. And there we obviously seek to support these cohesion policy, sustainable urban development strategies on the ground, and really also, let's say, drawing from the experience of innovative actions and injecting it to these strategies. Peer learning and sharing of good practices will be rolled out progressively next year. This is really in making now. Dedicated peer learning instruments will be put in place. The Urban Development Network will continue, and we will see for improvements and novel formats for that as well during the design process. And very important is to say that URPACT is our close friend. We will work hand in hand in a coordinated manner with URPACT, projects and colleagues and community. And very finally, Urban Agenda will be, let's say, in the radar, in the framework of European Urban Initiative. We will give support from the, let's say, the funding share, and we aim to interconnect all the outputs and actors to the workings of the European Urban Initiative, again to kind of break the silos and create synergies. This is said a few times. The budget here is 450 million euros for the 7-year period. And we are now currently working with the Hauts-de-France region, so the current implementing body of urban innovative actions, to start activities in the second half of this year. So this is to say that the future implementing body, Hauts-de-France, will take, let's say, the initiative to the practice. The first call for proposals is also foreseen immediately, almost after the opening of or kickstart of the initiative in the second half of this year. You may have already heard that the focus of the call, the topics, they will include support for new European Powerhouse. And the formal launch will be in the Cities Forum in the first quarter next year, and I think the location will be soon announced, so stay tuned on our, let's say, websites for the location. Very briefly, I think that my time is really going to end soon. I mentioned the new European Powerhouse initiative, this, let's say, the flagship of President von der Leyen. We in DG Regio, we are working and contributing to it. And a call for proposals was recently launched by Regio, and this is to support new European Powerhouse local initiatives, and obviously in the frame of cohesion policy. And this call will result in the provision of technical assistance to small and medium-sized municipalities. And also functional areas are eligible. Deadline is 23rd of May, so we really encourage you to look into the new European Powerhouse website. You'll see all the details of this call. 20 projects selected, expertise on the ground to really deliver shape ideas, concepts in line with Powerhouse and European Green Deal. Urban Agenda, I mentioned the support to this multi-level governance cooperation. I think in this moment I need to restrict myself to say that it has a very strong focus on green transition. Yesterday we heard from Stefania Manka, Genova, what Climate Adaptation Partnership is doing. Many other partnerships are there. I think the latest news is the most relevant in this context here, that Ljubljana Agreement, adopted last autumn, put forward a launch of 2 new partnerships. And later this year, this launch is foreseen if they pass the so-called ex-ante assessment, kind of expertise review, on the greening of cities, very relevant of today, and the greening of cities partnership will most likely have a focus on blue and green infrastructures, so rather environmental emphasis. And the other partnership is sustainable tourism. So again, stay tuned. Urban Agenda website is a very good source of information, and especially later this year, once the formation of these partnerships will start and how it will be organized, and really consider to join from your side of your city. Now it's time for me to conclude. I think that the very issue here, not least listening news this morning, is that Europe and its cities has faced crises one after one in the past years. We have the climate emergency, but there was a finance crisis, security concerns. There was obviously the health crisis, and now the most unthinkable, the war in the continent of Europe. And what it has, and what is it causing? Refugee crisis, energy concerns, and I think all of us and our thoughts are with Ukrainians. So we on the Commission side, we are more than ever on the listening mode of the needs of cities. What are the real issues that you need to tackle in this complex environment that we are, and complex period that we are living? So to shape the activities of European Urban Initiative, we would very much like to, let's say, hear from you during the discussions on the green skills, on affordability, social, that what are the formats of knowledge building and capitalization that would best help you? And the second one is also very important for us to learn from you. What are your plans? What are you going to do to contribute to the European Green Deal? We did so already yesterday, but I expect that today there will be interesting messages from your side. What is happening in your city, in that area? Are you, for example, orientating those cohesion policy, sustainable urban development strategies towards green transition and climate neutrality? So from the side of the Commission, once again, thank you very much for your attention and a warm welcome to this day of Urban Innovative Actions event. Thank you.
Many thanks, Pia. Thank you very much for also introducing the topic of the day, just transitions. Coming up next, now we will have the first panel of the day on cities, jobs, and just transitions. So I'll call the panel moderated by Eddie Adams to come on stage now. Thank you.
Thanks, Ophelie. Hi there, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, great to see you all. Thanks a lot for having us. I'm going to invite my colleague Kostas Kartelis to join me shortly. But I'll just say a little bit about what we're going to try and do in this session. As Pia said, we're kind of focusing on green skills. So we're going to unpack that a little bit, talk about what that actually means. But I think to kind of get started, I want to start with a thank you, an apology, and a confession. And the thank you is to say thanks to our colleagues at UIA, thanks to the wonderful city of Sevilla. Last night was like being on a film set. It was absolutely incredible experience, so thanks so much for that. The apology is because I'm 82 years old. I had to leave a little bit early, so I didn't stay right until the end. So I didn't have too many copas. But sometimes in this city, if you've had too many copas and you go down a little alleyway, you're suddenly confronted with a huge life-size image of Christ or the Madonna, or something which really kind of sets you back on your heels and makes you think about things you might have done differently. And my confession is, like many of us, I came to Sevilla by plane yesterday. So I flew. And I looked at what were the options of getting here, and I feel bad about flying, and we're all in this situation now as we kind of rush to reconnect, and it's fabulous to reconnect. It's really wonderful to be here together like this, but we know that we've got to balance out how we work in future, and the pandemic was a horrible thing, but it taught us many things, and one is we need to find the right equilibrium. So these connecting physical events are really fabulous. But we also need to temper them with working more effectively online and digitally. So that's the key thing. So I'm flying yesterday morning from Bilbao to Sevilla. We're just about to land. My flight left at 7:40, landing at 8:40. I'll be there in nice time. We're just about to land and the plane goes a bit wobbly. The pilot suddenly takes off again and says, "Really sorry, we can't land." And we do this huge loop of Sevilla. So I'm going to try it again, second time. We're coming into land. Everyone in the plane is getting a bit nervous by this point. It comes in, he almost lands, and then he goes, no, we're not going to make it. It takes off again. So 40 minutes later, we end up in Jerez de la Frontera, which I'm reliably told is beautiful, but I didn't really see very much of it. So we then see, I think, the three most frightening words in the English language. And these three words are replacement bus service. And you go, oh no, we're getting on some bus going to the middle of nowhere. So, but for me, actually, the two most scary words in the English language are not those three, but they are industrial transition. Because if you come from a city, I come from Glasgow, and sadly I missed Susan Aitken's presentation yesterday because I was hugging the person next to me, hoping we didn't be involved in a plane crash. So I missed Susan's intervention. But if you come from a city like Glasgow, industrial transition there are two words which scare the living daylights out of you, because it means the loss of high-quality jobs. It means the loss of high-skilled jobs. It means uncertainty, anxiety. So our rear-view mirror as a city is not full of good things in terms of industrial transition. And I think looking ahead, when we talk about the transition that is not just about to come, it's happening, it's here and now. People are very worried. There's lots of anxiety. It's very hard for politicians to create a narrative, a coherent narrative that explains what's going to happen, because really nobody really knows what's going to happen. So this morning in this session, we're going to talk a little bit about some work we've been doing for UIA, slicing through the 86 UIA projects, looking at how those projects have tackled this issue of green jobs, green skills, new green sectors, trying to unpick what that actually means. And we want to really kind of share with you some of the headline stories. Kostas and I will talk through a little bit about the content of the report itself and the products. But the key thing is we want to invite three cities on stage with us because they are the real ambassadors. They're the ones who can really convincingly communicate the experience. So we're doing that shortly. So Kostas, do you want to kind of jump up onto the stage and we can go through some slides? Before we do that, though, we want to kind of flip this around a little bit, because this is not a situation where all of the knowledge and experience is at the front of the room. So there's a huge amount of knowledge and experience out, in this room altogether. So we're going to go to Slido first of all. So we're going to hybridize this a little bit. There's going to be a QR code will appear behind me on the screen. If you zap the QR code, we'll get 3 quick questions just to involve you in the conversation. And then once we have our panelists up, we're going to keep pausing every so often, throw things out to the audience and get some thoughts from you guys on what's going on so we can have a bit of a dialogue. So you can see on the screen, you can see that there's a hashtag if you need to physically go through things. You should just be able to with your smartphone, capture the QR code, and that will get you into the first question. Because one of the first things we asked our cities in the discussions we had with them was, do you have a just transition strategy? So the very first question we have for you guys is, does your city have a just transition strategy? And if you're here with a non-city hat on, if you're here from the Commission or you're here from a research organization, just choose the city you live in, the city you work in, a city you know really well. And tell us whether or not it has a just transition strategy. And just to pick up on some of the comments from earlier and from Pia's point and the headlines from yesterday, this is all about people, obviously, and it's all about how we bring everyone with us. I think that's a key message, but it's also complicated. So today we'll talk about some of the challenges. We'll also talk about some of the solutions. 35 of you, I'm pretty dodgy in arithmetic at this kind of the day. Looks like there's more 35 of you in the room, 40 of you. Okay, let's let it nudge up a little bit. And then we'll move to, so at the moment 3/4 of you are saying, no, we don't have a just transition strategy. It's not working? No, okay. If you, apologies if you, and also we had this conversation, do we want to bring everyone in the room, have them looking at their phones? Anyway, so, we're kind of trying some newish things here. Let's jump to the next one. So that basically 3 out of 4 people, your city does not have a just transition strategy at the moment. Let's jump to the next one, if we can, Louise, the next question. Okay, so this is the acid test, if you like. So how confident are you on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is high, that your city will make a just transition within the next 30 years. So if you're super confident that your city will make that transition, and remember, just transition means moving to climate neutrality without leaving any people or places behind. That's our rough working definition for the purposes of this conversation. So if you're super confident, you're on 5. If you are less confident, if you're absolutely not confident at all, you're on 1. It's a bit weird because the numbers have jumbled. Everyone's kind of in the middle at the moment. 2, 3, and 4 are the kind of where the big numbers are, and thankfully, not so many of you are saying 1. 1 in 10 of you, 1 in 8 of you saying 5. That's good. Okay. Let's just do one final one. Are we okay with that one? Are we all 52 people? Yeah. Just to kind of warm things up. Let's just do the last one, Luis, and then we can jump into the slides. So the final one is, because we're going to talk quite a bit in this conversation about these new green industry sectors. What does this mean? What are they? How do we touch and feel these new kind of, industry areas which are emerging? So does your city have a structured approach? We'll talk about what that actually means. But it might mean you target specific sectors. It might mean you create spaces, digital spaces, physical spaces to incubate and support the growth of those sectors. So as I say, we'll talk a bit about how you might do that. But at the moment, the question is kind of yes or no. Interestingly, almost all of you, 70+% of you, 70% of you exactly, are saying no. So again, we can maybe open that up a little bit later on and just find out what's happening there and what we think needs to happen. Okay, so let's stop the music on that one. Thanks a lot, Luis. That's fantastic. Let's jump back to the slides. So I'm going to say a little bit about what we did and some headline findings. Kostas will then talk us through, especially this whole thing about supporting new green sectors. We were part of a team of 4, by the way. So, and the brief we had from UIA was, so have a big picture helicopter view of the 86, shrink them down to the ones which are relevant to this topic, and then really kind of forensically take apart the ones which are, which are the most interesting ones. So that was our kind of process. I know a lot of people in the room were involved, so thanks very much for putting up with us and staying with us. So let's jump to actually, we don't jump to the first slide, I can do it myself, I realize. Okay. So, this is our kind of takeaway from overall. So what we wanted to do was, the report has some high-level details, obviously, but what we wanted to give cities was a very practical set of instructions about how do you do this. Pia already talked about the fact that small and medium cities in particular are where a lot of the action is going to be. In a sense, the bigger cities will always be fine. So, this is partly aimed at those smaller cities who will have access to resources, but they're not so sure about how you can use them effectively. So this is our roadmap, and the roadmap, 7 is always a magical number, isn't it? We didn't want 8 or 6, so it's always 7. So we wanted to have 7 kind of key things that you might want to think about if you want to, effectively develop a kind of jobs and green jobs strategy. So the first one's about strong leadership. Again, we'll unpack that. I won't read them all. Second is about developing a local skills plan, which is part of an overarching strategy. So don't have something separate and remote. Make sure it's all part of the same, overall approach. This point about implement an integrated approach. We contacted some cities and said, we want to find out how you're approaching just transitions. And they said, well, we don't do just transitions. We're about climate adaptation. Or we're about energy transitions. So we had initial tricky conversation explaining what we wanted to do. And then secondly, some of them would say, well, that would mean us speaking to people in other departments. I said, hey, yeah, that will mean you speak to people in other departments. So we all talk about the integrated approach, but in reality, sometimes we're not quite as good at it as we think we are. So lots of things came out of this from us. So, integrated approach matters. This whole thing about climate justice and social justice. Yeah, if you're involved in Horizon projects, as I am, you have a bunch of scientisty people, quite often guys, over in this room, and then you have a separate conversation about social justice in another room. So, if we get serious about this, it's about aligning those two conversations in a way that we find difficult in the past. There's a big issue about building the capacity of the public sector, which again we'll talk about. Public procurement, which some of our cities will mention in the conversation. And then something which Kostas has been really strong on in the work we've done is this need for involving different ways of financing, bringing the private sector in, having, the public sector cannot do this alone. Innovation around finance, so all of those things are in the mix. So we're not going to go through all the details in this session this morning. We'll just pick out some headlines, and then we'll signpost you to the report and the other products so you can see them yourselves. We asked the cities that we were engaged with, so what are the barriers you face around this green jobs, green skills agenda? The first thing they said was mobilization of citizens. They don't really understand what green jobs are. They think it's people with a PhD in a white coat in a laboratory. There's this sort of problem with the narrative and with the language explaining what green jobs are. So and getting citizens on board, which we talked about a bit about yesterday. It's also about getting businesses on board, which I think we also talked about yesterday. The other things we'll kind of maybe come on to. I don't want to go on to talk about them too much. In Europe, we already have massive skills mismatches. All of the evidence is there that there's a huge supply and demand issue, which is exacerbated by a whole range of things, the kind of digital transition, for example, the whole challenge for the education system, which are big juggernauts, how you turn those around and react to a labour market which is moving in dog years. Every 1 year is 7 years, this whole sort of compression. So these are some of the headline barriers which people shared with us. Key question is, who is most at risk of being left behind? So who are the people we are really worried about? None of this will surprise you. So one of the key things is people who are already marginalized in the labour market, people who are already low-skilled, people already in peripheral, vulnerable situations. They are the ones who are most likely to be left behind. And if you look at a city like Rotterdam, so check my notes here. So in Rotterdam, the COVID pandemic really kind of exposed a lot of the vulnerable nature, and the sort of precarious situation of many people in the labor market. In Rotterdam, 43,000 people are freelancers. 15,000 of those people needed public support during the pandemic. So almost half of the city's freelancers, who you think are hipster coffee dudes, and et cetera, it's not really like that. Sometimes there are people in gig economy jobs, platform economy jobs. So if you're lower skilled, you will have 20% of lower skilled people have regular training. 58% of people with high skills have regular training. So if we're going to bring people with us, and we're going to equip people with the skills they need for these new jobs, we're going to have to transform how we engage with some of the key groups on this list. We had an interesting discussion about women yesterday in our breakout session, whether you have women as a separate group, and then they're visible, they're flagged as a priority, or whether you just have them running through all the different groups, in which case you risk losing that visibility, but also you say, well, women are 50+% of the population. So we had an interesting conversation about that. I mean, one of the things that came out of our work was that if you look at a sector like the renewable sector, 32% of people working in that sector are women. So only, not even a third. That sector is going to massively grow in the next 10 years. So we have to find ways of equipping women with the skills to get into these growth sectors. So there's a gender dimension to this conversation. Micro businesses we might talk about a little bit with our colleagues in Ville de Cannes. And then, as you know, there's an estimated 380,000 people who will lose their jobs in sectors which will disappear completely. They're the ones at the kind of tip of the iceberg. And again, our report points out where they are and how we might support them. This is the final kind of slide in terms of asking what the situation is. There's a territorial conversation to this. Obviously, cities don't work alone. We mentioned the European Urban Agenda. Pia talked about that. And the need for an integrated approach, which is not just horizontal, but also vertical. We asked, how effective is multi-level governance? The good thing is more than half of people said it's quite effective. National, regional, city level, it works pretty well. But you can see that more than a third said it's not so effective. Still big issues there about how we make this work. And if we come back to the European Green Deal, an Italian colleague said to me in Parma last week, Italy's about to get more public money than it has since the Marshall Fund. So how do we actually, the key thing is going to be, how do we localize that money? How do we make it work on the ground? How do we make sure these territorial layers connect in the way that they should do to make sure that we get the transition we need? So let me say a bit about forecasting, and let me hand over to Kostas. He'll say a bit about the new sectors. This is a horrible slide, apologies. I'm not going to read through it. I'll just pick out some headlines. I think the key things to say here are forecasting for future green skills is really, really difficult. And of the 86 UIA projects, we only really found 4 cities who had really majored on this. Why is it difficult? It's complicated. Cities don't have the skills in-house to do it very well, so they have to use research bodies, universities. It's expensive. It takes a long time. It's hit and miss. It's very hard to know if you're going to get it right or not. So a whole range of reasons cities have shied away from this and been a little bit anxious about getting involved in this. But if you don't know what's coming down the tracks, it's really hard to prepare. So the cities that we've picked out, Eindhoven, Aveiro in Portugal, Manchester, Ville de Cannes, they're doing some really interesting things. They're all featured in our case studies. And at the bottom, you can see some of the kinds of things they're doing. So, a way of redefining occupational profiles. What does this job mean now? What will this job mean in 5 years' time? What skills do I need to adapt? Things like observatories, involving all of the stakeholders, all of those things are part and parcel of the conversation. So I'm going to move on to the next one. Kostas, I'm going to hand over to you just to talk us through the green sector's headlines. And maybe we switch microphones. Can we switch microphones?
No? No? Yes?
No.
Okay. Thanks. That was not your act of...
I didn't do that.
Okay.
Maybe I did.
I thought you'll never let me speak. So that's it.
I saw those looks.
Well, we did this effort with respect to the green sectors, as Eddie said, with Roland and Simone, and we saw that there are at least 25 projects that we out of the 80 plus ones that were dealing with emerging green sectors. So we went through every single project to see the bits and bytes with respect to the organization, the targets and the ambitions. And this is a list of the major conclusions that we came up. You have seen that there is a wide range of emerging sectors with good replication potential. And you can see that we have seen blue and green solutions in Amsterdam. A lot of projects were involving nature-based solutions. It seems that it's something that has been in the mentality of the local regions, the local municipalities. Urban greenery, which goes along with MBS, smart energy systems, and eco-innovative products. And practically, we realized that there is a new sector that's been evolving, which is climate-friendly urban planning. That is, to plan for the urban area, but to introduce climate-friendly elements and practices. And this is very important because that demonstrates the capacity of a city to practically move to climate adaptation, to climate change adaptation. Adaptation cannot be achieved just by improving urban greenery or by just placing some photovoltaics in the city. You have to have a holistic approach with every single element on board, and each element to be complementing the other. We've seen good examples of demonstration projects, and seeing is believing. We have seen that in the cases that the projects did demonstrate results, the replication potential was better. So there was a close correlation of the fact that you have to have the citizens with you, with and for the society, is the message. And in order to have that, you have to demonstrate. Once you demonstrate, people, even those who are negative ones, get a better understanding that the green sector is making the life better in the city. We have seen that there's a key role for the city authorities, but there are challenges, as Eddie said, about the capacity. We have seen that some municipalities struggle to put together all the different elements of the project in terms of the green sectors, but they finally made it by discovering new solutions. We have seen municipalities outsourcing services because they didn't have the capacity to do it by themselves. So when there's a way, there is a result. The next point is the spaces to cross-fertilize between old and new sectors. And this is both the digital and the physical space. We have seen cities at the same time, while promoting the green sectors, using also the digital benefits. In this sense, they managed to put together all the new sectors to multiply and magnify the impact of their project. The next one, I thought it was one very important message, and I think was also said by Pia in the morning, the fact that there were living labs for knowledge transfer, and these living labs were supported by universities. There were multi-partnership approaches, and there was always, in most of the cases, a university on board which took over the responsibility for exemplifying the innovation in knowledge and passing this knowledge to the students and to the academic world and also to the citizens. And we have seen some cases, Eddie, if I'm correct, that the same universities included the information from the project in the curriculum. So they modified the curriculum to improve the skills provided to the students, which was very good because it was very, how should I say, it was very immediate after the project. The co-participatory process was a success. I know about that in Paris, in Barcelona, where people were co-designing the measures at the local society, at the local neighborhood, and that was important because they got ownership of the approach. The green procurement was being mobilized effectively, although at not the same level by all cities. In some cases, cities did promote green procurement very solidly, I mean, with a lot of support by the technical personnel. In some other cases, the skills were not there, so green procurement was not an easy case. We have seen good examples for financial innovation. Biladecan is an excellent example. It will be discussed later on. And other cases, Göteborg also with the bond, which has been developed in order to finance the green sectors in the course of the following years. But there are gaps to be taken on board. And we have seen a number of case study examples, which are Paris, La Perranda, I always had a problem to say this word. Barcelona and Amsterdam, of course, Seville, which demonstrated yesterday an excellent project,
Yeah.
very sophisticated and with a great replication potential. So this is pretty much the case. There's a lot of space for improvement, of course, but there's already a lot of space for green sectors, and the UIA projects did demonstrate the potential to introduce the green sector in the city life for the benefit of the citizens and for the benefit of the climate, I mean the local climate. That's about it.
Thanks a lot, Kostas. And I mean, just go back to Lappeenranta. So I love, the fact we've got Lappeenranta, which is a small Finnish city near the Russian border, who have done an incredible circular economy project where they've essentially found a kind of an alternative product to reinforced concrete using waste materials in the mining sector. I mean, it's so impressive. It's absolutely amazing. Super scalable, because part of this conversation, how do we scale? How do we replicate? How do we kind of get a reach beyond these fantastic 86 projects? So it's great to see Lappeenranta. Also great to see Villa de Cans, which I also think is the asterisk. 72,000 people punching way above its weight. This fantastic level of ambition they have.
The city from the industrial city has seen the challenge coming in front of them, that they will lose jobs.
Absolutely.
And they have been moving to a green sector in order to sustain the jobs.
Yep.
It's the example that you gave before, that a lot of, in the energy sector, there's going to be, in the coal energy sector, there will be a lot of jobs lost.
Yeah.
And that was a good example of a proactive measure.
Totally. So don't just sit and wait for it to come, anticipate it, think about how to do things. This is the penultimate slide, and then the final one is just about where you can find this material and what we've got. Again, I won't go through everything. At the bottom, we've got some nice case studies, Rotterdam, Cluj-Napoca, again, doing some really interesting stuff with the Roma community, and also with young people working in the creative and cultural industry sector. Aveiro, Manchester, Eindhoven, we mentioned earlier on, we might come back to some of their stuff. Again, some of this work here is about how we cleverly involve some of those most marginalized groups. So in Rotterdam, a career start guarantee, looking at the new kind of growth sectors, gamification, some really clever ways of engaging young people in the project in Eindhoven, House of Skills in Amsterdam, of course. Lots of ways in which we're trying to engage people, seeing is believing, touching, feeling stuff, so they understand what's coming down the tracks. So again, I won't go into this because you can find the main material. So we have an Inception Report which sets the context for the work we've done. We have a final report published last Friday. It's on the UIA website. We have these 10 case studies which are short. They're 4 pages. Just gives you a really kind of nice deep dive into each of the city's stories. And then we've got 3 podcasts which we're working on at the moment. Again, we should come into our 3 different themes, one on forecasting, one on supporting new green skills, and the final one looking at skilling and reskilling. So we'll stop talking there. We'll invite Raphael Diole from the Oasis project in Paris to come up and join us. Carlos Ferreira from Villa de Cans also come and join us on the stage. I'm not sure how comfortable these chairs are, but they look pretty groovy, so let's hope they work. And Casper Span from the Resilia project in Amsterdam, please come and join us. So I think we've probably been PowerPointy enough. So we asked each of our city colleagues not to do a presentation. We asked them choose an image, one single image which tells your story about green jobs and green skills. So that's the way we're going to open the discussion. We'll then do some questions. Kostas is changing his hat. He's now Professor Konstantinos Katalis from the University of Athens. So he's now there with a different kind of perspective. So we can be a little bit playful around that. So let's see what comes up first. I can't remember which slide comes up first. Hopefully you will recognize it's the last one. There we are. Villa what? Okay. So, Carles, first of all, maybe introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, where you fit in, and then what's on the screen there.
Sure. Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Eddie. Thanks for having us here. Thanks to the UIA for having us here. It's fantastic to be meeting again, even with all the contradictions of meeting again. So this is an image of really a community, really. We don't fit everybody in one picture, so that's why we only have these few people here. But Villa Watt is a community project. It's a project basically to the flagship project for our energy transition strategy in Villa de Cans. And it sits on 5 pillars. It started in 2016, so it's dated in many ways. It was in true UIA spirit an innovation project, so there was an opportunity to try new things and to learn things from these experiments. And it's really based on 5 pillars. So the first pillars is, like I mentioned, the community, which it really takes shape in the form of a consortium. This consortium is a private, public, citizen partnership in which we have public administration, city council, but also the metropolitan entity participating in this consortium. There's some participation also of the business community, and there's a participation of the citizens. And they do, both the businesses have an association, and the citizens have an association, and they all belong to this consortium. This consortium is important because we talked before about governance and the difficulty of governance and how do we involve citizens and how do we involve businesses in this process. So Villa Watt is an initiative that is actually a city initiative. It's not a municipal initiative, okay? So that's the first, it's a governance point, but it's an important pillar of our project. The other one is, well, the actual activities that we've developed. So one is on basically renewable energy supply, basically aggregate purchase of energy, sustainable energy, obviously. The other one is a learning community, so basically meetings, trainings, and other programs that have educated our communities at all different kinds of levels. Not only about consumption and what it means to be more efficient in our use of energy, but also of the jobs and opportunities that arise and what the business community can also do in order to push this just transition. The fourth element is integral energy retrofitting. We did a number of projects. We worked with 57 different homes, 3 commercial spaces, and basically we've been doing this for about a year or 2 now that it's been working, and now we're measuring actually the results. And lastly, an important part of the Villa Watt project is the local currency. We built a local currency as a part of this project to see what other ways we could have to drive the funding of this, because it's really complicated. The Villa Watt local currency is one of the biggest now in Europe. It has 4,000 users almost, which is not a lot, but is a lot for local currency. And it has been significant in trying to both engage the public and try to understand what are the values and the intention behind Villa Watt. That's very important because a just transition is also about values. And finally, it is conducive to investing in energy transition, because it gives you basically some credit in local currency that you can use in the local economy and using in the local commerce and retail and so on. So that's the history of Villa Watt. New things have happened. We will talk about those, I'm sure.
Thanks a lot, Carlos, for getting us started. That gives us a nice picture. We will dip into some of those in more detail shortly. Let's jump from Catalonia to Paris. Raphael, what can we see on the screen here? Tell us the story.
Yeah, is it working? Yes. Hi everyone, I am Raphaël Turlier from the city of Paris. I am the Oasis Schoolyard project manager. And you can see a schoolyard transform and one who is not transformed at all, which is not transformed at all. It's not a before-after picture, but it's look like it. But it's schoolyard which is not transformed, elementary one, and the pre-elementary one next to the other that is transformed. And I think it's something that you can see, the transformation, not only on the idea that it's a completely new way to renovate schoolyard from a green perspective, of course. It has been a very big change for our engineers to renovate schoolyard in this way and to have to learn new technical solutions to transform it, and also to work with new companies, new partners in the green sector, with landscapers and also people we were not used to work with when we renovate a public equipment such as a schoolyard. But also I like this picture because I think it's also a way to to see that it's really a matter of society for us to change schoolyard in Paris, and that it's important for children to see to live in another environment every day and to spend 3 hours a day in this environment. So it's important that it's really different from before, and yes, and it's also a way, I think, for children to have a concrete experience of what a natural area is, and also to believe that I think we will have very different adults, I hope, with this kind of schoolyard that where they can be every day. So I think this is, yes, a matter of society for us to transform our schoolyard, to transform also the behavior of children and the interactions between them in that kind of area every day, to promote cooperative games and new activities and new playful activities for them, but also to help them to have sensorial and sensitive way to experiment climate change, and the need for us to preserve biodiversity and natural spaces in town, in the cities. So I think it's really way more than a technical and adaptation to climate change project, and it's something important.
Fantastic, thank you. And we'll talk about, you mentioned engineers. This is a school, so education is kind of at the heart of the whole conversation, so we'll come back to some of those things shortly. Let's jump to Amsterdam. Hi, Casper, great to see you. Again, just tell us, what can we see on the screen here?
Hi, Eddie. This infographic shows that we believe that the roof landscape is an essential element in transforming the city. The Resilio project was focused on the blue-green integration, blue-green functions on the roof. I love to compare it with the concept of the sponge city, well known. We extended the sponge by including the private landscape, the roof, very difficult for the public sector. We thickened the sponge by creating an extra water storage layer underneath the green, so it and we added smart technology, so we can micromanage all those objects through a decision support system. That's very technical. But it creates a layer that can react to weather forecast, climate settings, local water management data. So you can optimize the sponge by squeezing it, in fact, and thereby creating a climate-robust roof landscape. We work on roofs for a long time because next to the blue-green climate adaptation solutions, we see possibilities for energy, the solar panels, of course, but also in the densification of the urban landscape, we need to use the roof. So many functions are already battling for space on the roof, and that's a good thing. But the other challenge is to make them work together. And that's where integration and a more holistic approach of the roof landscape is essential. I loved working on Resilio, but it was only a project of 3 years and 6 months. It was only successful because before we created an ecosystem of involved stakeholders who were already focused on the roof landscape and trying to find a relation to that. We worked with a broad consortium with, the classic triple helix, but we extended that with knowledge institutes, NGOs, citizen initiatives, social housing companies. So the complete ecosystem of stakeholders in the city is involved in this whole blue-green roof and further setting. Next to that, last remark is that we worked on that through a Green Deal green roofs on a national level, because as Amsterdam, we are very full of ourselves sometimes, but we can't do this alone. We need to involve other cities and other parties, because then the market grows, the knowledge grows, and everybody's involved. So we reached out, and we were also one of the founders of the National Roof Plan, which is a national collaboration with all the mentioned stakeholders before to work on the multifunctional roof landscape.
Brilliant. That's great. Thanks a lot, Casper. And funny, my friends in Rotterdam say the same things about Amsterdam, actually. I mean, thanks for getting us started, guys. So what I suggest is we're going to have a couple of rounds of questions. We'll push the pause button. We'll open stuff out and see if you have any questions, comments to make, to jump in. So that's how we'll kind of structure this. I mean, maybe one of the nice things about working with Kostas and Simone and Ronald was we'd go out and see this great stuff. We'd interview people. We'd read all the stuff. We'd come back, and then we'd say, well, what did you understand by that? You unpack things together, and you understand one thing, I understand a different thing. So, you know, you're making sense of what you're seeing, and you're trying to process it and say, well, what do other people need to know about this? And I think you were the first one, Kostas, that came up with this idea of a new green urban policy. You know, we can see cities doing things in a different kind of way. So maybe do you want to say a little bit about why you said that and what it means, and then I'll maybe ask each of our cities to maybe explain how that works in their context. What is this new green urban policy, and how does it work on a day-to-day basis?
Well, all the cities had the same mandate. That is to move to climate adaptation, to climate change. But they have different approaches. It also depends on the ecosystem, if there's ecosystem there, whether there's an overarching policy in the city, and whether there's an understanding of the green sector itself. But we found out that they have been trying to develop a new kind of planning in the city that is not the traditional planning which has to do with buildings, the urban form and the urban function, but introducing the climate change dimension in the city planning. And that was done by also some scientific analysis. We have seen projects where science was integrated in policy making, understanding the flows of energy and heat and mass in the city and taking this into consideration. And at that time, Eddie, Simone and Roland, we thought, is this the case for all cities? Does the size of the city matter? Do we have to develop typology for small cities and big cities? And finally, we realized that even small cities developed big projects. They found a way to overcome difficulties due to the size and the lack of capacity and personnel in order to demonstrate that they can do a bigger project. So the green can be both for a big city and for a small city. And this is a solid conclusion of all the study that we did, that there is space to be used for cities as far as green sectors is concerned, because it's very friendly to the city operations, as long as some preconditions are met. We don't have time maybe to discuss these preconditions, but we can see them in the report.
I see you nodding, Carlos. Does this make sense to you in terms of the way Vila de Cans, the small and medium-sized city, is approaching its whole approach to urban planning? Is this a transformative moment?
For sure. From Vila de Cans' perspective, basically the last year has been quite transformational for us in the way that we think about the city and the role that we have. We basically approved two seminal documents in our city council. One is the strategic framework, and this strategic framework has given us some access that articulate the policies of the city, and some missions. So working with missions is a very different way and challenging way of planning and driving policy. We have two missions that are particularly relevant. One is we have committed to climate neutrality by 2030, which is definitely demanding. We're punching above our weight, as you were saying before. I don't know, we'll need some magic potion like Astralis does. But this really sets the standard, sets the goal of what we need to do. We also have another mission, which is around building and sustainable building, and how do we develop a hub of knowledge and technology that delivers a different kind of climate neutrality in the building industry. And this is particularly important because of a substantial part of our economy and of our jobs is linked to the industry, to the construction industry, or to construction. So yes, in this way, all of our policies are changing because now we are looking at things not only in terms of the individual projects that we need to do or we need to achieve, but more of what are the goals, the long-term goals that we are trying to achieve on a 3-10-year basis, and all of our planning is radically changing because of that.
Yeah. How does that play out in Paris? I mean, a big capital city, metropolitan city, scale is ginormous. Again, can you see this kind of new way of approaching how we've traditionally done urban planning and all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's not completely new in Paris.
Yeah.
We have a history on that, but I think it's just the beginning in the same time, sorry. We are now working on a bioclimatic local urban planning and involving citizens with workshops and time to think with people about what kind of city we want to plan in the next decades. So yeah, it's very a current issue, but also I think we are lucky in Paris to have internal expertise, a lot of labs, intern labs in the city, and also a very vivid green NGO sector to rely on and to work with today in Paris, and a lot of activities and things to do in the green sector. But also, I think it's to comment on what you said concerning more smaller cities. We are having many exchanges with French cities on the schoolyard projects, and a lot of cities in France are transforming their schoolyard now, and are worried about the fact that they are small and maybe not have all the resources to transform them. But we are saying I don't think it's something that that is a problem. I think when you have less resources, you have more creativity, and sometimes you can do things very interesting. And it's very challenging for us to see other cities and smaller ones doing things in a good way, because they are using circular economy in more simpler ways than we can do that. And so it's very interesting to exchange practices. And I don't think the size of the city is a problem when you want to have a transition.
Thanks, Raffaele. Amsterdam recognized as a front runner, again, like Paris, you've been doing this for a long time. Is it still changing though? Is it still shifting and evolving? And you mentioned the word ecosystem, which also Kostas referred to. So are approaches changing? Are our perspectives to this?
Difficult. There are changes all the time everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, all the crises were already addressed. So the thing is to prepare for the future unknown. And that's an enormous challenge, and that's a cultural break from how we used to work, where we planned the city that we want to live in. And we're finding that more and more difficult. So the ecosystem approach, it's not an official policy, but it's a cultural way of how the Dutch like to work. Maybe I should have told you before that I'm an ecologist by education and by nature. But a robust ecosystem can handle stresses, can find its own ways to come up with solutions. We love to invite the knowledge institutes and the students to feed them with the possibilities of the roof landscape, so they can find their own, implemented in their own study objects. We work with mid-schools and lower schools to help the children develop a sense of climate change, adaptation, and their role in that perspective. And maybe I'm an advocate for an unstructured way. That's not official policy, but by structuring, you're always working with that what you know. And we should learn to work with the unknown unknowns, and a more robust ecosystem approach is fitting for that.
Yeah, it's a really good point about unknown unknowns, because the whole point of planning is is based on we know what's coming. we have a perfect picture of what's coming down the tracks. We just anticipate it, we line things up. It's all very systemic and nice. But actually, things are much messier than that, as we know, and are going to get messier still. So being comfortable with uncertainty, being comfortable with talking about, saying, actually, I don't know what the answer is. If you're planners or you're leaders of cities, those are hard things to stand in front of an audience and say. So there's some really deep challenges in this. I'm going to ask one more question. And I won't ask you all. I'll just ask you, if you wanted to jump in and just give me a little signal. It's about maybe pick out a sector which is evolving, changing, or a new sector which you can see in your city. Because part of our conversation here is about the transformation of existing sectors. You mentioned construction, for example, Carlos. And then we're getting into the whole blue-green conversation. And you talked about engineering. So we've got existing sectors being transformed. And we've got new sectors popping up and lots of cross-fertilization. So I'm going to maybe just ask one of you to get the conversation started. And then let's go out to the audience. I think we've got a roving mic somewhere probably. So after this little exchange, if you've got a question or a comment, pop your hand up. We'll come and find you and we'll bring you into the exchange. So this question of new sectors or existing sectors, who wants to get us started?
Well,
Go on, Carlos.
From the opportunities that have been created, or from the lessons that we have learned from the Villa Watt project, developing energetic communities or energy communities is a challenge of its own, because it is a new way of actually handling and delivering everything. So that's creating an interesting opportunity. First of all, not just installation and the needs to basically scale all of this setup of solar panels and the transition that it requires. That basically we don't have the skilled people, not locally. I mean, we don't even have it nationally. So we have developed our own plan for basically a certified program for basically developing the skills and being able to staff not only our people, but the people around us, and the needs of the cities and the companies around us. But just managing of the communities, of the energetic communities, of what that means, right? Because they are basically about getting together small ecosystems of players that naturally they don't necessarily have a very close relationship. They don't really understand. They don't really share culture, and you have to share something as central as energy. And how does that work? So there's certainly a new sector there, and we are experimenting with Villa Watt and with also some private initiatives that are emerging in the city to manage energy communities. Which we find this really interesting.
And I think you have a shared physical space which encourages cross-fertilization and these kind of chance connections. And I remember you also mentioned the work with Roca.
Yes.
Roca is a big construction business, so working with one of the main sectors in your locality. Maybe say a couple of words about that as well,
Sure.
Carlos, and then we'll...
So we have those two projects that you're mentioning. One is the Business Innovation Center at Vila de Cans, which is basically a center around innovation. And it's an opportunity to basically bring together the ecosystem of knowledge, of entrepreneurs, of established companies, to try to get educated and develop projects jointly for a specific purpose. And everything is green transition today. I mean, we don't really do anything that doesn't have that focus today. And just transitions is also part of our DNA as a city. It's always been like this for decades. So all of those conversations are happening in this place. Specific projects emerge from this physical space that then take on a life of their own, just like any entrepreneurship space of anywhere else in any other city. And we have this partnership with Roca. We are basically working with them and with other big companies in Spain, actually, to build this hub around sustainable innovation. And it's not only about Roca's business. It's really about rethinking how we build and rethinking about how we live. Because in the end, it is not only about technology and materials, but it's also about the process of how we build, and it's also about the way that we live and that we share our spaces. So it becomes a really cross-functional and multidisciplinary experience. And it's very exciting and it's very challenging.
Thanks, Carlos. And again, we dip into that a little bit in the case study. Did you want to come in there, Rafael or Casper? Yeah.
Well, I can add to that the way we build or plan and combine it with blue-green infrastructure is still a challenge. I mean, we see blue-green as soft, as lovable, as very qualified, not quantified. But the fun we brought in with Resilio was that we also matched it with hardcore technology and digitalization. And where those two meet, we can build new types of cities. We see this as a part of the smart city. We were also on the smart city conference in Barcelona last year. And bringing those sectors together creates new questions, creates new jobs, creates new challenges where the market should step in. So that's why I knew this project was really innovative, because sometimes it generated more questions than answers. And then you're on a path where you're still searching for how are we going to deal with that. And that's where the knowledge institutes and new market opportunities arise. And feeding that is a public role, I guess, and that's what we love to do.
You want to add something?
Yeah, maybe to go back to engineers and,
Yeah.
and challenges. First of all, apologies if there is any engineers in the room, but my experience is that it's quite challenging to let an engineer know that he needs to learn something new that he doesn't know before. And because, for example, concerning the schoolyards project, one of the challenges was a completely new way to manage rainwater in the schoolyards. And we have a kind of an internal expertise in the city of Paris. We have a Paris Pluie plan. It's a way to deal with rainwater in a city and to try to restore, a water cycle in a local way to see it. And it was completely new, and we need to try to go step by step to let people understand we need to change the way they usually do things. And for some of them they were doing that for decades. So it was completely new and very interesting to have the impression to have a complete innovation, but it's in fact it's sometimes very low-tech solutions and very natural ones, and sometimes ancient ones indeed. So it was interesting to have the impression to move all together in a new perspective of rainwater management in the city of Paris.
That's great. And you've touched upon a couple of things. So we see here in Sevilla very old, here Moorish approaches to water and how we use buildings to create shade and to manage the kind of natural environment. You've also talked, Casper, the whole thing about the spun city. From a country which has traditionally fought the water, and we use technology, we can beat nature, we can keep nature out to more of a accommodated coexistence, accepting that it will come. We just need to work out how we deal with it when it comes. So, these are mindset shifts, and engineers sometimes have a particular approach to problem solving. I'm looking at, I can't really see you actually. I'm looking out to the audience. If you've got a question, or if you want to join the conversation, stick your hand up and we'll bring you a microphone. We're going to run for another 10 minutes or so, because even though we've been given an extra 20 minutes, we've started late. I can read the room well enough to know that people probably need a little caffeine injection soon. So, but let's take a microphone up to that chap there in the white top. Could you just introduce yourself, please? Tell us who you are and where you're from, and then let's hear your questions. Thanks a lot for helping us get started on this. We might, it's in Spanish, so we might need some help too.
I'm the interpreter. Good morning. I am sorry, I do not speak English. My name is Ángel Fernández. I am the manager of the public company of Solivena from Getafe. We are going to be involved in the next panel, but I wanted to say that we are speaking about just transition. And this concept of just transition is also taking us closer to citizens. If we achieve just transition, we can avoid all these waves of rejections towards the European Union, towards these policies, towards climate change. All this feeling of rejection will be reduced, but we need it to be just. And just means that we have to reach all citizens, because citizens have to feel that they benefit from this transition. So I want to thank the UIA for the opportunity they have provided to Getafe. We have been able to work with energy poverty. We have been able to link with citizens. Citizens will see the consequences of European and local policies in their lives. So I am really happy that all the projects presented today are getting closer to citizens. They are making it possible. They are making a just transition possible, not leaving anybody behind. Because at the end of the day, we want to take the ones on the bottom to the top. We do not want them to remain on the bottom. So any of the speakers, but let me speak to Villavans. But how has your project achieved that concrete citizens change their lifestyle? Our project has the headline of healthy housing, because we are targeting directly citizens so that they can see how the money of the European Union can change their lives. Thank you.
But maybe you'll give a much better playback than me.
Just a summary. I'm not sure that I can capture everything, but the question comes from Getafe. And basically talking about just transitions and the importance of this concept to basically challenge the drift that citizens have away from Europe and from the concept of Europe, and how this receiving the direct impact of these policies at the individual level is reinforcing our sense of unity and in particular, he has a project that I'm assuming he will present or has presented on energy poverty, and basically that affects and influences individual citizens.
Great. Thank you.
And the question that he had for me, but I think for the panel in general, is how do our projects have impact at individual level? So how has it impacted the citizens on a singular perspective?
So let's give you guys a couple of seconds to reflect on that. I mean, I think Pia talked about this policy objective 5, bringing Europe closer to people. I'm from the UK. Sadly, Scotland is still in the UK, last time I looked. And one of our key lessons about Brexit is we cannot be complacent. We have to get this message across to the benefits of being part of Europe. So thank you for the question. It's a really, really great question. And you can have green cities which are not just cities. We can move to green cities which are even more polarized than we have at the moment. So it's not a done deal. It's not going to definitely happen that we go to climate neutrality without widening inequality. These two things are, we have to keep pulling them together. So that's a great question. So Carlos, do you want to get started and then we'll open it out to Paris?
Sure. I think the Villabat project was very experimental. So there's a lot of things that happened within the project. And the question I think that you're implying is what is the impact that it has in terms of sustained impact? So there's impact within the project, that's one thing, and sustained impact. I'll talk about the second one because I think that's the most relevant one. And at that level, what we have is this training program which provides opportunities, new job opportunities for individual citizens in Viladecans in a moment where this industry is particularly challenged. Construction, especially it's about micro companies, it's about these freelance workers that are, you know, not knowledge workers, you know, they just, you know, they work in installation, they work. So basically having knowledge and skills that will drive them to new opportunities, new business opportunities, is definitely a direct impact that is going to affect their well-being. And the second one is the use of the currency. The currency has had actually quite significant impact in the way that our local retail and the local commerce, urban commerce, it works, and it's had a significant impact in terms of the amount of business that they do with local customers. So this circular economy, in the sense of local economy, has worked quite well, and the currency has been quite significant and making that happen. And we always get feedback from, you know, local retailers saying, "Oh, this is the best thing that you've ever done," and so on.
Great. I'm going to jump to Kostas because I have this recurring nightmare that I'm on stage and someone comes and gives me a card and says, "You're sacked." That card doesn't say, I said, 5 minutes left, Kostas has to leave at 11:20. So, Kostas, I'm going to give you the chance.
You can leave and you can stay.
So maybe I know you need to rush, and I've been on stage before where you're worried about, you know, missing a plane or a train or something. So do you want to just say something about this key question, and then I'll invite
I would say
Casper and...
we have seen that the major benefits for local societies. I mean, people feeling that they are part of the story, and the solutions are working for their personal life, for their daily life. For instance, in Barcelona, where they have developed all these open school climate shelter spaces, they are open for the public. Whenever there's a heat wave, they can jump in and they can practically have a better cooling situation. And it's important because they see that there is a reflection by the municipality on their local needs. Usually we think that the governments, the national governments, are far away from the citizens, from the residents, but in some cases municipalities are also far away from the residents. So in these projects we have seen that this distance has been minimized. It's closer to decision making, and that's very important benefit for the societies.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. You had a big election on Sunday, and there was a very polarized situation in France, and this question about how we get these messages out to people, how we communicate to ordinary citizens the benefits, the impact. Again, what's your take on this question, Rafael?
Maybe I will just add some things about Barcelona, because our project is very similar, and it's also the same idea to have in the heart of the neighborhood have a place to meet and to gather in the neighborhood with inhabitants and parents of the school. So it's also one of the goals of the project, and something we have done, open the school, and it's something completely new and very stressful for the Ministry of Education, for example, in France. So we did it, and it's okay. Everybody is still here, and we are fine. But yes, so I think it's something that we can experiment. The benefits, yes, for people on their daily life, and also I talked about it earlier. But I think for children, it's really something very important for their daily life, and that possibility to have access to nature and to a place very interesting for their development every day, and that's something that we wanted to do as well in Paris. So I think I hope they can feel individually and also in collectively, because I think also we are trying to say that the school and the schoolyard is a common good, and it's something important in the life of the citizen in Paris to have that impression that a schoolyard is something that is really something public, really, in the deep sense of
that. It's a public asset, yeah. I'll give the last word on this to you, Casper.
Well, what's nice to mention that the Resilio project was mainly focused on the social housing, and the social housing neighborhoods are very mixed in Amsterdam. I wouldn't compare them to the banlieues, but to bring climate adaptive measures to these real estate environments is essential to involve also the more difficult to reach population in the climate adaptation measure. So we used that in our participation process, didn't we, Marie? Yeah. But the difficulty was also that they couldn't influence the choices to make. One of the questions that often arise was, but can we see the roof? Can we have access? Well, that wasn't in the project scope, so that was an answer no. Maybe something for a next project. We'll think about that. But you have to involve and bring livability and the message of climate adaptation also to the more difficult neighborhoods. And I think that's also one of the successes of Rosilio, where the communication made it possible to, well, tell the stories. Yeah. Although the roof landscape is still sometimes hard to grasp because you almost never see it. Yeah, but we had a nice cargo bike with a demo roof on it, so we could bring it to the public on the public space.
Fantastic. Okay, I suggest we carry this conversation over coffee. I think you all need a caffeine injection by the looks of you. Maybe you had too many copas last night, who knows? So I'm just going to say a big thank you to our panelists shortly. I think Ophélie will come on, or someone will come on and tell me what's going on, because I need to know, have we got 15 minutes, have we got 10 minutes? So, but before we do that, just a huge thanks to our panelists, and to Kostas also for coming. As I say, we didn't get as interactive as we hoped we would have done, but let's carry on the conversation over coffee. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you shortly. Ophélie, are you going to tell us what's happening next?
José, please.
Bueno, vamos a hacer un break.
We will have a 30-minute break now from 1:15 to 1:45.
A short break, a short coffee break, and we will be back at 11:45. Thank you very much. Enjoy.